Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to the Scottish borders once again, and we're going to revisit a brewery who have a very good reputation and that I've tried some very good beers from in the past. And this is a style that I really quite enjoy actually. So for this one we are going to go back down to Galashiels and we're having a taste of another beer from Tempest Brewing Company. So this one is called In the Dark We Die and it comes in at 10% ABV and it's an Imperial Black Ipa. From what I understand, this is basically just a kind of amped up version of the In the Dark We Live, which you've seen me review before. I think that one is 7.2%. That's a regular Black IPA, and this one is an Imperial Black IPA. As I've told you before, this is a style that I really enjoy, but I've always felt that you need a little bit of caramel and things like that in the Black IPAs to really make them shine. I've had quite a few where it's just a straight, pretty much pale and black malt base, and it just, you know, without having that sweetness, I think this style suffers a little bit, and that's why I've always preferred the Imperial Black IPAs over the regular ones. Probably my favourite that I've had in this style so far has been the black malts and body salts from Toil in Copenhagen in Denmark, but I'm really hopeful that this one can prove to be a very nice beer as well, because I was impressed with In the Dark We Live. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Tempest Brewing Company before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Tempest Brew Company then, on to my brewery notes quickly. So as I've told you before, Tempest Brewery was founded back in 2010 by Gavin and Anika Meiko-John, and Anika had trained as a chef in New Zealand, but the couple returned to Scotland in 2007 to run the Cobbles Bar down in Kelso, which again is very close to the Scotland-England border. But Gavin had previously worked for the Whistler Brewing Company in British Columbia and Canada, so he had already had quite an appreciation for craft beer, and he'd taken some brewing courses in Sydney and Australia, and he actually homebrewed in his garage in Wellington in New Zealand on a small 50-litre kit brewery, and that's a very good place to get into brewing. Wellington is a very good beer city by all accounts. But Gavin is joined by Alan Rice, who acts as the business development manager for the company, and he previously worked for Stewart Brewery in Edinburgh as well. But the brewery was previously housed in old dairy buildings in Kelso, and this brewery was had equipment that was largely homemade and engineered to produce big beers on a very small budget. But their beers proved to be very popular, and they moved to their current and bigger home in the Tweedbank Industrial Estate in Galashiels. In June of 2019 they submitted plans to build a new brewery building with a bar and restaurant on the site of the former Eldon Mill, which is very close to the new Tweedbank train station, which is part of the new Scottish Borders Railway, or should I say the reopened Scottish Borders Railway, and they're hopeful that this can really help spread their reputation. But in fairness, they are pretty well known throughout the country these days. Probably my favourite beers that I've had from these guys was the Marmalade on Rye. That's a lovely that was that double IPA, but regardless, it's a lovely beer, that one. Old Parochial is a beautiful Scotch ale. The Brave New World is a really nice West Coast IPA as well. To be honest with you, pretty much any beer you try from these guys is pretty good. These guys are very consistent in the quality of their beer, and you know, if you get the chance, try some of their stuff, because you definitely won't regret that. They've undergone a couple of different rebrandings. Originally, I remember their beers being in big half-litre bottles. They rebranded and got the new labels that were, they almost had this kind of trim around them, which was really nice. That was the second iteration, and the new beers have a slightly different look to them with these more kind of silk appearing labels. So yeah, they've done, this will be the third iteration of their branding, if you like, but like I say, definitely a brewery that you want to check out if you get the chance. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Tempest Brewery just now. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. If you want to see the list of all the different beers that they've done, I recommend that you look at the the Rate Beer or the Untappd pages, but they are a fairly prolific brewery and they're always putting different things out there. So yeah, let's get this guy out then and we will get on with the tasting. So I'll let you have a little look at the artwork quickly before we open it up. There you can see it. If I put this bit up to the camera, I'm just checking on the control that you can see it. There is the Tempest Brewing Company symbol. This little T thing here. I think I just hit the camera, but yeah. So nicely presented beer, this one. As I said, this beer I think is basically an amped up version of In the Dark We Live. So, you know, quite clever on the name there. But it says on this beer it is 65 IBUs. The hops in this one are Mosaic, Simcoe and Columbus. I believe Columbus is the bittering hop in this. And the malt base is Pale, Munich, Carafa and Caramel. So I'm guessing all of those will be from Germany. And it's got a California yeast strain, 10.0% ABV. And it says it's best before May 2020. I'm not sure actually, because I mean I think I bought this beer in the Good Spirits Company in Glasgow, or was it Valhalla's Goat? I can't remember exactly where I got this one, but if it's saying only May 2020 at 10%, you probably could age this beer a little bit more than that, to be honest with you. It says here, this is a double dry hopped imperial version of our black IPA. We are the hops. Over time, our resin, pine, berry and citrus flavours will fade away and die, so please don't age. Store chilled and drink as fresh as possible. So yeah, so I guess that, yeah, changes it a little bit over time if you don't drink it fresh. There you can see the nice Tempest Brewing Company symbol. But yeah, really nicely presented beer, this one. So without further ado, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. I'm not sure how well you can actually see the artwork on this. There is a sort of inlay, but with these, that's always the thing when you're filming reviews. If the can's silver or if it's black and grayscale like this, it is quite difficult to show. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious to see how this turns out. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening. And we'll get it out and into the glass. That looks really good actually. I'll give it a little bit of an aggressive pour. There you go. But yeah, in terms of appearance then, nothing overly surprising about this beer. You know, when you get an Imperial Black IPA, you do expect it to be this lovely dark colour. If I shine the light through this one, it does have a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it. There's a solid finger and a bit that I think it's gone down a little bit. There's a solid finger of quite a mocha. In fact, actually, that's a bit darker than that. That's almost a medium tan coloured head that's on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass and a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall, it looks very, very nice. I like how this one appears, but nothing overly surprising about this beer when you consider its style. Like I say, a nice little bit of a ruby, almost Coca-Cola coloured edge to this one. So yeah. Nothing surprising about that, but let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on then. Oh, that smells good, it really does. Now, I have to say, my experience of the high alcohol beers from Tempest has always been very, very positive. So when it comes to Scotch ales, I've got a few other ones that I'll try over the next little while. But the Old Parochial is a beautiful beer. That one was around 9% or something like that. It's a beautiful Scotch ale, that, and one that you definitely need to check out if you get the chance. I think they brew that every year. And again, this one, the high alcohol beer, it's got such a level of complexity to it. It's great. You know, oh, that's awesome. So straight away with this beer, when you smell the aroma, you're going to notice just how boozy it is. It comes across as a big boozy beast. You can pick up some nice roasty black malts in there, but they take a bit of a back seat. There's a lot of brown sugar coming out of this one for me, and it's very, very bready as well. That'll be the Carafa malt, but I mean, they've used a German malt base in here, as I was saying, Pale, Munich, Carafa and Cara. All of those malts I'm pretty sure will be Weirmann. Carafa is a Weirmann trademarked malt, if I remember correctly. So you'll have a big, beautiful German smoothness to this beer. I love it, you know. Big fan. My whole love of beer started off with the Bamberg Rauch malts and Rauch beers and Schlenkerla and stuff like this. But you can smell that German smoothness just forming the base of this beer. So yeah, roasty black malts in there. You can really smell a kind of nice bready quality in there. It's almost like a very well fired bread crust, like a hedgehog roll. It really kind of smells like that straight away. You can pick out, there's some really, really big brown sugary notes to this one, and it comes across as very treacly and molasses, and it's interesting because it really smells very, very thick, but at the same time it doesn't come across as being like toasted or anything like that. It's a really, really very, very thick treacle molasses quality that's coming out of this one. It's a really interesting aroma in this beer. Like I say, you've got a nice bready character to it. It's not simply a well-fired bread crust, if you like, but it comes across as almost dusty and brown bready at the same time. But it's the brown sugars that are really dominating this one. One of the surprising things about this is that you don't really get chocolate malts in this. Sometimes you can get a little bit of chocolate out of these, but for me it really is about the brown sugars in this, and it's very, very thick. I'm not getting any kind of biscuity notes in this one or anything like that. It does come across as very, it really just comes across as very brown sugary, and the more you smell of it and the more you kind of saturate your nose with the aroma, it does come across as being quite, you know, it really does come across as being very sweet. The more that you smell of this brown sugar, the sweeter this beer gradually becomes. So the malt base, it's not the most complex of malt bases that I've come across, but I'll tell you something, it's one of the richest malt bases you're going to come across in this style bracket, if you like. So thumbs up to Tempest Brewing for that. They've done a beautiful job with this beer, and the malts really dominate the aroma. That's why it's taken me quite a bit of time to go through it, but as I say, to me, not overly complex, but what's in there is very, very rich and very kind of satisfying. On the hoppy side of things, tiny little bit of earthiness coming out of there. You can really smell the sort of floral qualities coming out of this one. Columbus is a hop that I've always found to be very, it's got a very distinctive, spicy floral aromaticity to it, and you can really pick that out of this beer as well. There's a little bit of grassiness in there, and you've also got some really nice kind of fruity notes as well. The fruity characters coming out of this beer are absolutely lovely. And Simcoe, they have used a bit of Simcoe in here, and it really, Simcoe can give you some really interesting notes when you put it in stouts and things like that. It's a very unusual hop when you put it on the dark side of things. You always get different fruits out of these beers depending on what malts you mix them with. So for me, this one has a really, it's almost like a blackcurrant blackberry kind of thing that's coming out of this one, but at the same time you've got a little bit of a kind of, it's not raisiny, you've definitely got a little bit of an almost plummy sharpness to this one coming out. A little bit of fig maybe, but a very, very rich, almost, it's not sharp enough to be raisins like I say, but a very rich red fruity quality to this one. I love how that aroma comes out. At the same time you can get a nice sort of citrusy quality out of this one. You can really smell, I don't think it's quite lemony, but you really get a nice sort of grassy, sharper citrusy note out of this beer. It really is very nice how all of that goes together. It's really, that's a lovely smelling beer, that. I mean, as I say, this isn't the most complex beer that you're going to come across in terms of Imperial Black IPAs. I do remember black malts and body salts being a bit more complex than that, but what it does have is a real richness to its aroma, and it's just beautiful. So thumbs up to Tempest Brewing Company for the aroma of this beer. They've done a beautiful job of this, but I'm sure we'll get a good level of complexity to this in the flavour. But it's not all about the complexity, remember, it's all about how well it's crafted, and I'm pretty sure, just looking at the aroma, this is going to be a good beer. So let's see how we get on then. This one is the In the Dark We Die, an Imperial Black IPA coming in at 10% ABV from Tempest Brewing Company, down in Galashiels in the Scottish Borders. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål. Oh yeah, that's really pretty nice actually. Again, this is definitely not the most complex beer that you're going to come across. I remember the old Parochial being a good bit more complex than this one is, but this is very, very well done. So massive thumbs up to Tempest Brew Company for this, and it's cool to see that they're still doing a beer like this. I've said to you before, I really miss the black IPAs. They were all the rage in what, about 2014, 2015, maybe even 2016, and they're just, they've kind of fallen by the wayside. It's all about New England IPAs now, and the West Coast IPAs by and large have disappeared too, but it's cool to see one of the really well respected Scottish breweries kind of putting this beer out there. I'm not sure how many times they've done this beer, if they've done it before this year, but this is beautiful, awesome. So yeah, let's try and break this one down then. It's a the first impression that I have of it is a very, very smooth malt base, and I like how that goes together. So let's break this down then. So, middle of your palate, you can really feel a little bit of that roasty, black malty quality, just blanket in the middle of your palate. The thing that you have to watch with this is that it comes across as very, very smooth. That'll be the influence of Carafa, which in some instances, that can often come across as being kind of coffee-like in its flavours, but this is a very, very smooth malt base that it has there, but at the same time, you get that lovely black malty quality to it. So Carafa, yeah, it's a little bit more like a kind of smooth version of straight up black malt. It doesn't quite have the kind of roasty, dry qualities that you'll get of that, but you know, it's just nice how this goes together. You've got that roasty, toasty, bread crusty quality I was talking about in the aroma, just blanketing the middle of your tongue. On top of that though, you can really feel the Munich malts kind of influencing that. The Munich malts will give you this lovely smooth breadiness across the middle of the palate, so you've got a really interesting balance there between that roasty bread crust property and also the Munich malts, just kind of smoothing that out a little bit. I really like how that kind of influences this beer. It definitely has that almost German quality to it, if you like. And like I say, I'm pretty sure it's Weyermann malts that's in here. And an interesting point is that the Weyermann Versuchsbrauerei, as they call themselves, the Weyermann pilot brewery, because they brew their own beers as well, they actually do a black IPA, which if I remember correctly is around, I think it's about 6.8% or something like that, and the malt base that's in this really does remind me of that. So yeah, interesting point to make. So if you do get the chance to go to Bamberg, try some of the beers. The Doppelbock and the black IPA that you'll get from the Weyermann Brauerei are very, very nice. The smoothness to the malt base in this one is absolutely lovely. In the middle of your palate, you really get these nice brown sugary notes, and again it comes across as being a very, very thick treacle molasses. What you'll notice with this beer is that the more you drink of it, the more those kind of roasty qualities start to push their way out of the flavour. The beer gradually does dry up in the centre of your palate. You get more and more of the drier elements and roastier elements pushing their way out of the malt base. So that lovely German smoothness that you get in the beginning starts to subside and the roastier qualities push their way out. Like I say, centre of your palate, you've got a really nice oily treacle molasses quality coming out there. Like I was saying, I mean, this beer is definitely not the most complex one that you're going to come across from Tempest Brewing, but it really it's all about how these flavours blend together, and it's very, very well crafted. Pardon me, you're immediately going to notice that, and compared to other black IPAs that I've had, this one is definitely one of the less complex ones, but definitely one of the smoother and almost more easy drinking ones. For 10%, this beer, I mean, you can detect that it's a little bit boozier, but at 10% it's ridiculously easy to drink this. It's crazy, that actually. Definitely a sipper, this one. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful beer, that. You know, in fairness, there's maybe a little bit of a slightly woody undertone to this one. If you go to the front corners of your palate and then go in a little bit, you might pick up a little bit of a woody quality in there the further that you go into the aftertaste. The roasty black malt qualities that you have of this beer really smooth out a little bit more and they almost become a little bit more dusty the more that you drink of this beer as well. And I think the roasty dryness that you get out of this beer starts to take a little bit more kind of prominence, if you like, the more you drink of it too. But the malt base in this one, not overly complex, just really quite well done, I have to say. So yeah, and it's as I say, usually with an Imperial Black IPA you want a bit more sweetness, and you've got a little bit of that here, but I really think this beer leans more towards the bready, toasty side of things. So an interesting approach with this beer as well. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a really nice kind of earthy quality in there, and that builds a good bridge between the roastier elements of the malt base and the hoppy side of things themselves. And that earthiness just spreads forward a little bit. Then as you reach the front corners of the palate, you've got a nice floral aromaticity there, and it's almost quite a spicy floral character. Like I was saying, the Columbus is a very it's a very sort of spicy. It has this very unique spice to it. If you try a few beers with that in it, you'll really notice it. It's a very popular bittering hop. They always add that early in the brew, and it doesn't actually say that it's on that in the bottle, but if you look on the website, it does tell you they've got Columbus in there. But you can detect that nice spicy floral aromaticity in this beer on the front corners of your palate. Then round the very front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, but in fairness, you can feel that toasty, bread crusty quality just creeping its way forward with this beer. So that's another really interesting part about the flavour of this one. Behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters start to come out of the beer. And what you're going to notice with that is that it's quite citrusy and almost a bit sharp when you take the beer in. It does have an almost, it's not quite lemony, but it's got the same kind of potency and sharpness that you'd get from lemons, but it really smooths out quite quickly and becomes more juicy and berry-like and red fruity. But you can, in fairness, get a little bit of an almost lemony, grassy type quality on the very edge of your tongue. But I would say the fruity notes in this beer, they're not kind of cakey, if you like. Yeah, they're not really cakey, but very quickly you'll notice this. It almost just rolls down the front of your tongue. You've got a little bit of a, it might be a cherryish sharpness to this one, if you like. There is almost a little bit of a cherryish quality in there. Cherries, plums, and then very quickly it kind of makes that transition. It's not tart enough to be raspberries or anything like that, but it really makes that transition from the cherries and the kind of plummy notes to being, maybe raisins as well in fairness, but it makes that transition quite quickly to being quite blackberry-ish and yeah, blackberries, blackcurrant. I don't know if blueberries maybe. I think it's more blackberries, blackcurrants. And it's a bit too sharp in its juiciness to be figs and things like that. I've always found the figgy juiciness is a little bit lighter. So the red fruits in this one are a little bit sharper compared to some of the other black IPAs that I've come across, but they come, everything in this beer just goes together really quite nicely. And like I said, this beer is, it really comes across as very smooth, and I've just noticed on the back here as well, did it say there was oats in here? Yeah, it says there's a bit of oats in this, and that might explain a little bit of the smoothness that this beer has as well. That's only going to amplify the actual, you know, the smoothness of the German malts in there. So it's an interesting point. And that's one thing I would say to Tempest about their website. If there's oats in there, put that in the actual malt list, because really they are used as part of the malt base. But yeah, it's really nice how everything goes together in this one. Like I say, overall, not the most complex Imperial Black IPA that you're going to come across, but one where it's immediately obvious that it's very, very well crafted. Into the aftertaste, you've got that roasty, bread crust quality pushing its way out. You've got a bit of earthiness from the hops, and you've also got some of those juicy berryish fruity qualities lingering there as well. In terms of the mouthfeel, I would describe this beer as being yeah, that's a full-bodied beer. The carbonation is really quite nice. I would say it's quite a smooth carbonation. The mouthfeel of this beer really is pretty oily, to be honest with you. With the malt base, like I said, it's got a roasty, kind of toasty backbone to it, and that pushes its way out the further you go into the aftertaste, but it does have a great deal of smoothness to it, and that'll be both from the German malts, from the fact that these malts are Weirmann malts, distinctively smooth, but you've also got the oats in there too. On the hoppy side of things, you've got a good bit of bitterness, mainly from that Columbus hop. I think it said it was 65 IBUs. I was going to say 60, but yeah, it's got a good bit of bitterness to it, which is what you would want from this style. And you've also got that lovely, quite sharp but also quite juicy fruitiness there. And one of the other things you'll notice about it that's just come into my mind is when you take the liquid in, you'll feel the real sharpness, and you can definitely, it's almost very, very slightly tropical on the front part of your tongue as soon as you take it in, and that's the Simcoe that's really giving you that mosaic. You know, mosaic often gives you a little bit of an orangey quality, and in fairness, in the beginning of the beer, when it's right on the tip of your tongue, you can pick up a little bit of a slightly orangey quality in there as well, a tangerine orange, but the Simcoe is really making it just that little bit more kind of sharp actually. The Simcoe, I believe, is the one that gives you these sharper berryish notes out of the beer when you mix it with dark malt. Actually, I've had a good few stouts and black IPAs with Simcoe in it. It's a lovely hop to use in these style of beers. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. A lovely beer, this one, very, very well crafted. Not the most complex beer you're going to come across from Tempest, but it just shows you it's not always the case that you have to use a million different types of malts and lots of different hops to make a really good beer. So huge thumbs up to Tempest Brewing Company for this one, and I look forward to trying more from these guys in the future. I'd love to see these guys have a go at a German Doppelbock or you know, like a Belgian quadrupel or something like that, because they do seem to do these high alcohol malty beers very, very well. So maybe a Doppelbock or a quadrupel would be a really interesting beer for these guys to have a go at. A tripel or a Belgian blonde would be interesting too. I don't think they've actually done that many different Belgian types of beer, so hopefully that's something we see from them in the future, because it tends to be the case that pretty much whatever these guys try, they tend to be pretty good at it. So keep an eye on Tempest Beer Company. As I was saying, a very, very good brewery in my opinion. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the In the Dark We Die, a 10% Imperial Black IPA from Tempest Brewing Company down in Tweed Bank or Galashiels in the Scottish borders. Lovely beer and definitely worth checking out. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your favourite beers from Tempest Brewing Company. I'm sure I'll return to these guys in the near future. Do give me some Imperial Black and regular Black IPA recommendations, and I'll make sure that I continue to review this style regularly for you on the channel over the next little while. Make sure you check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys very soon. The In the Dark We Die, 10% Imperial Black Ale from Black IPA, sorry, from Tempest Brewing Company in Galashiels down in the Scottish borders. Lovely beer, and until the next time, Slàinte just now. Slàinte, skål, cheers.